Get in, the jailer ordered roughly. Don't move until I have you chained in. We don't need a fool-jumping ship. Not looking at the jailer, the prisoner did as he was told. He focused his attention on the young Dominican. You're first, he asked.
Cimarosa's Two Barons of Rocca Azzurra Overture, Patrick Galois and the Sinfonia Finlandia Jyväskylä.
Music on WCRB is here thanks to you and the Holiday Pops. You can join Keith Lockhart and the Pops for the holiday favorite Home Alone, live in concert with orchestral accompaniment, December 29th and 30th at Symphony Hall. Tickets at bostonpops.org. Classical Radio Boston is 99.5 WCRB.
Santa and Satan both equal 55 in gematria.
Also on WGBH HD2
and
Boston. WCAI
both five-letter
HD2
words.
West
And
Martha's Vineyard.
it's the sun. It's the suntan. Aten, the sun of December, ember, when everything is turned tan. The old year of the old man.
Good morning, I'm Tyler Alderson, 54 degrees.
54 degrees, yeah.
Temperatures up in the upper 30s when we get into the evening today as it starts dipping after that really warm day we had yesterday. Broke all kinds of records. 63 degrees the high, which was incredible. Today, not quite as warm, but still pretty nice for the second day of winter. Well, Mozart was a fantastic composer, but, you know, his dad was also pretty darn good as well, and we're going to be listening to Leopold Mozart's Trumpet Concerto ahead at 9:30. Right now, here's a Concerto Cologne playing Charles Avison's 6th Concerto Grosso.
Andy Kaufman and Agent Wrestlers match. Yeah, 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 yeah. This is connected to my Donald Trump series coming up, the continuation, Donald Trump equaling Donnie Darko. Because Andy Kaufman is like Jim Carrey at the epicenter of this whole masquerade, cult of personality facade of the face, of the mask of the man on the moon. What is real? Perception is not reality. You don't know that what you're perceiving is reality, the true. You're first, he asked. I don't know what you mean, brother, said the young priest, who was having a hard time getting back into the boat as it swayed on the water. He wasn't coastal born. This might have been the first boat he ever met with. Giordano Bruno, Everything is Light, in Gob by Deepak Chopra. The prisoner faintly smiled. I should have been more specific. Your first excommunication, inquisition, conspiracy against the innocent? And don't call me brother, I've been defrocked several times when it suited them. This one's a talker, the jailer grumbled, nodding to the gondolier, who pushed away from the palazzo steps. The dawn sat on the horizon, blessing Venice the way wealth and beauty expect to be blessed. By now, the prisoner was shackled and bound. He sat in the middle seat of the black lacquered boat with its grandly carved prow. As they glided past a row of waterside palazzos, no one noticed an onlooker wearing a nightcap who had appeared at an upper window of one palazzo. No one but Bruno, the condemned man they were carting to Rome. Tilting his head, he shouted with unexpected violence. I've been despised by bigger men than you. I've been despised by kings. Tomorrow I will be despised by the Pope. Traitor, coward. The man in the upper window scowled and backed away, out of sight. Quiet down. Honest folk are sleeping. I don't want to have to gag you, warned the jailer. Honest folk are sweating between incestuous sheets. Half of them, said Bruno. He laughed to see the look on the priest's face, then leaned forward confidentially. That man who was staring down at us, he has no conscience. I was his friend, his teacher, but he condemned me to the bishop anyway, for spite. I woke up in his house one morning to see 5 ruffians storm the room. They thrust me into his garret before the officials came. He'll go back to sleep now, and at noon he'll pay for a special mass, just in case being a Judas irks God a little. The young Dominican had been forewarned about the prisoner's silver tongue. He was determined not to respond, but it was a long row to the mainland where a prison cart awaited. The gondolier, who was fat and belched garlic fumes, pulled lazily on his oar. He was in no hurry. God is just. Perhaps you will find mercy, said the priest, judging his words carefully. The jailer in the employ of the papal see, and he had ears. The jailer was in the employ of the papal see, and he had ears. Ears to hear. Bruno twisted his mouth. Don't give yourself away. Sympathy with a heretic is the same as being a heretic. And are you a heretic then? Do you hate God? God? Bruno eyed the young priest. The late duke I served took an interest in me personally. He sat at my feet for months. Then he concluded that I had not a scrap of spirituality in me. I took it as a compliment, although the duke was shocked. He drove me away from court by night in a cloaked carriage and hoped never to set eyes on me again. Bruno paused. You think me very confident for a condemned man. Not condemned yet, corrected the priest. As good as. The canal soothed the waves that rolled in from the Adriatic. If you judged the church by the magnificent domes that rose around them, you'd think Venice was paradise. A better paradise than Eden, since this one was swathed in silk and gold. Bruno fought the sway of the boat to sit bolt upright. Can you smell the corruption? I was being tried by the Bishop of Venice, but that wasn't safe enough. Now Rome demands my body. We both know what they intend to do with it. Have you ever heard your own bones crack? Nasty. Pardon me, I realize that the clergy isn't used to hearing the truth. The young priest wanted to retort that his whole life was devoted to the truth, but he shrank back. The prisoner's rashness pushed at him like a fetid wind. For the rest of the trip over the water, no one in the gondola spoke. They landed at a small stone quay that was deserted except for the prison wagon. Before he could be hauled into it, Bruno jerked his chains. The jailer's attention was caught. The Dominican had already climbed up to a seat on top. I want to say goodbye, Bruno said. Goodbye to who? There's no one about. If you're blind. The prisoner enjoyed being an enigma, clearly. He knelt on the bare ground for a long moment, placing his cheek against the earth. He couldn't blame the earth for his troubles. Perhaps the times were to blame. The plague scoured his village when Bruno was a boy. Under the shadow of Vesuvius near Naples, Turks raided the countryside and hauled away slaves. Your sister or daughter might disappear overnight. Crops withered, as if so much ill fortune deserved nothing less. Despite any such curse, the real blame was in his nature. Giordano Bruno's soul was inflamed by anger, zeal, curiosity, many things. Yet his insatiable appetite for fame is what goaded him into insanity. Insanity made him the most notorious heretic in Europe. Not a simple insanity either, like the visions that poor wretches had, screaming about Satan with a goat's head and fiery eyes. Bruno wanted to be the most notorious heretic in Europe. He wouldn't be satisfied until the Pope sent for him personally. And then what? And then what? They would have a brilliant conversation. Bruno would rise up and dazzle the Holy Father with his arguments. What were his faults in the church's eyes? He held that the earth moved around the sun. So did Copernicus, a Catholic, while Aristotle, a pagan, said no. Bruno had written other controversial things. That infinite stars shone in the sky. Each one had a planet with human life on it. That all things were made of God, not just by God. That in every man, even the grossest sinner, divine light is present. These notions were not heresies, they were truths. They had their own divinity if only you opened your mind. Bruno could already see the admiring look in the Pope's eyes as he unwound his defense. A torrent of eloquence climaxed gloriously as the Holy Father shrank into his ermine-trimmed robes like a frightened child, while Bruno, brandishing his fist, cried, "See, I have proven it beyond the shadow of a doubt. I am not the heretic, since I worship the truth. You are!" He felt a kick in the ribs that wasn't soft. "Get up. You've kissed the mud long enough," the jailer growled. Bruno's fantasy was reluctant to vanish. Staggering to his feet, the most notorious heretic in Europe fixed the jailer with icy arrogance. "Take me to Rome immediately. I have things to say." The jailer, who was not just a clod, appreciated the act. He gave a mocking bow and opened the door to the prison wagon. Bruno stepped inside, ignoring the stench that filled the dank interior, which was lit by a single barred window on the door. There were no seats. He sat on the filthy straw-covered floor while the jailer chained him to 2 iron rings hanging from the side of the wagon. "Apologies. We left your Honor's satin cushion behind." The door slammed shut, and soon the transport was bouncing on the hard stone road that led down to the water. The January chill pierced the cracks in the wagon boards, but he thought better in the cold. His manacles were mercifully loose, and except for the stench, Bruno wasn't in any great discomfort. This was all a hopeful sign. The church wanted him back. It wasn't going to subject him to such degraded suffering that he couldn't keep his mind intact. Even better, he was not pursued by the demon of despair. Even at that moment, sitting in the filth on the wagon floor, Bruno appreciated being alone with his thoughts. They were his one consoler, as they had been since he ran away to become a monk at 15, almost 30 years before. "I am as safe as my thoughts," he told himself. The Inquisition in Venice had been going his way. He would have won, but one day the courtroom was vacated. And the accused was informed that his case had been transferred to Rome by direct order. Even though the demon of despair never visited Bruno, it brushed him lightly when he heard the announcement. Rome means death. He quickly swept the fear from his mind. He would talk about the stars one more time. "Look at them, see what I see." The revolving heavens would save him before the church brought heaven crashing down on Bruno's head. The journey to Rome took 2 days. The prisoner wasn't fed or let out of the wagon, even for the call of nature. He slept, hanging from his chains. A weaker man would have doubted that the church still cared for him. To Bruno, these privations proved the opposite. His mind was so feared by the authorities that the court wanted him to be fatigued. They would find him more compliant that way. This belief redoubled when the wagon had almost arrived at the destination. The wheels stopped with a lurch. The door was...
Davison's 6th Concerto Grosso, played by Concerto Cologne here on 99.5.